I'm Shauna Rosner, your host of In-House Counsel Chronicles. Today, my guest is Diane Gabl Kratz. Diane received her bachelor's degree in physics from Cornell University and her JD from University of Chicago School of Law. She started her legal career at two top 100 law firms before she transitioned to working in-house. I can't wait for her to share her journey and insights with us. Welcome to the podcast, Diane.
Thank you very much, Shauna. I'm so happy to be here.
So, you began your career with a degree in physics before entering intellectual property law. How has your technical background shaped your approach to legal strategy and problem solving?
Well, studying physics at Cornell University was a very intellectually stimulating and challenging endeavor, but it served a critical purpose in terms of developing my analytical abilities, and that has served me well throughout my career. It also required a level of persistence and resourcefulness, I think, that has been very helpful as the years have gone on. In particular, being able to tap into the talents of colleagues. Getting through physics at Cornell required working very closely with other students, taking advantage of opportunities like office hours with TAs, and really building up that kind of intellectual firepower that has served me well. And then when I went on to law school and started my career as a patent litigator, the technology that I had learned and the science actually was directly relevant to the work I was doing. Understanding physics allowed me to learn other kinds of technologies a lot better. I remember a specific instance in which I was actually helping a law firm partner in big law understand the science behind diffraction gratings, which was relevant for a case that we were working on.
Did you know when you went to law school that you were going to law school because you wanted to do intellectual property law?
No, I did not know that. I had actually intended to go on and get a PhD in physics. But during my junior year at Cornell, I took a survey course in law that was taught by one of the law school professors, Professor Robert Hillman. And it was just fascinating. We covered contracts, torts, constitutional law. And I love the subject so much that got me very excited about becoming an attorney. And one other factor influenced my decision to go to law school. I was involved in a small claims lawsuit in New York City the summer after my junior year. And from that experience, I realized how difficult it was to access legal help and to navigate the system. I had naively thought that as a native English speaker, as someone who was somewhat educated, it would be easy for me. And it wasn't. There were so many obstacles to getting justice. And it was so frustrating to me. I thought, I need to have this tool. I need to be able to not only help myself and my family, but help friends and neighbors and make sure that people are not being taken advantage of and that they have the support that they need to navigate the system. So those two factors together strongly influenced my decision to go to law school.
And what about the IP part? What made you just specialize in that?
Well, the IP part was just trying to capitalize on my physics degree. I decided I wanted to be out in California and specifically in Northern California. So leveraging that physics degree towards Silicon Valley and intellectual property was actually the best case I could make for coming out here when I was doing job interviews. I actually don't have any family around for 2,000 miles or more from California. So I was the very first one in my family to make this kind of a move. And my story was, I want to do IP. In retrospect, I wish I'd had a chance to experiment a little bit more, but I have found my career to be very rewarding.
When you started at law firms, first one was Morrison Forster. Did you start right away in IP?
Yes. Morrison Forster, unlike some of the other large law firms, did not allow associates to rotate through different practice groups. So I was slotted into intellectual property litigation from the very get-go.
Gotcha. And how was your time at both of those law firms help you prepare for your in-house work?
Well, it certainly did not prepare me fully for in-house. During my 5 years in big law, there were very limited opportunities to work directly with clients or to get close to the businesses that we were supporting. But big law did develop very rigorous down in the weeds legal skills, all of the analysis and the research and the drafting. And those formed the foundation of my legal career. I think also big law was critical in developing time management skills and ability to prioritize. and an almost painful level of attention to detail, which is very, very useful down the road.
What was most surprising for you about moving from private practice to an in-house position?
I was surprised by how different yet rewarding the work was. The very nature of work in-house, at least in most cases, is very different from private practice. Learning about a company and how it works is just so interesting, and getting that exposure to the business. So shifting gears from private practice, where you are a legal advisor, to being in-house where you're a business advisor is just a very dramatic shift. And instead of just focusing on protecting the company, you're now shifting your focus to being able to enable the business to achieve its objectives. And that means entirely changing your relationship with risk. So perhaps along those lines, the most critical piece of advice that I have for new attorneys that are going in-house is twofold. And the first is that you need to align your perception of risk with the business's risk tolerance. And there's going to be a massive range of risk tolerances, from a startup that may have a greater risk tolerance for whatever reason to a very well established company that's been around for 100 years in a certain kind of highly regulated industry that does not have much of a tolerance for risk at all. And there's also variation across different aspects of the business, different business units, different geographies. Some companies are going to have a lot more risk tolerance in terms of making money than they do with, say, employment law or how they manage their people, or to what extent are they worried about privacy or cybersecurity concerns. So that piece of advice is trying to make sure that you are aligned with your business's risk tolerance is just critical in how you navigate through the world as an in-house counsel. Sort of the corollary to that is to make sure that you are escalating risky decisions to ensure that the right people are making that decision. And by that, I mean making sure that people of appropriate seniority have the final say. So here's an example. I remember in my very first in-house role at a previous company, I was advising the marketing department on some trademark issues. And a manager level employee, so mid-level, junior level kind of employee, was adamant about pursuing a product name that actually had significant risk implications. It risked infringing a competitor's trademark. So as an attorney who had just come over from private practice, there was no way that I, as the head of global trademarks for this Fortune 500 company, was going to allow a mid-level employee to put the company in such a risky position. I insisted on escalating that matter all the way up to the executive level. And at that point, I realized, okay, if the executives are okay with it, if they fully understand the risk here and they still wish to proceed, that's fine. And I, as an attorney, have to accept that as an in-house counsel. But I need to just make sure the right people are making those decisions and taking on that level of risk. At that point, I've done my job. I can feel comfortable with the decision, or if not personally comfortable, at least know that the right people have been involved and have gotten to weigh in.
So you made a move from that company, which was what, Seagate Technologies,
Yes.
correct? To your current position, which is at Dolby, correct? Tell us a little bit about your position now, if you will, your title, what you do.
First, let me just say I am so grateful to be at Dolby. This is by far the best place I've ever worked. I have a fabulous supervisor, so I report directly to our Vice President, Chief Patent Counsel, Tyrone Brown. He is super supportive and utterly brilliant, pretty much everything you could want in a manager. And Dolby is just such an exciting place to be for an intellectual property attorney. We have both very powerful monetizable technology, and we also have a well-established, exciting brand. So for someone who does both patents and trademarks like I do, it's the ideal place to be. At Dolby, my official title is Director of IP Strategy and Operations, and I do a lot of different things. So one portion of my role is people management. I lead an 18-person team, mostly located in our San Francisco headquarters, but also with some colleagues in our Dublin, Ireland office. I also head global trademarks for Dolby, and I maintain a small patent portfolio and basically support our VP Chief Patent Counsel with whatever he needs or is able to offload to me. So it's an interesting and varied role.
Dolby's IP portfolio, I understand, is massive, over 25,000 assets, right?
That's about right.
Okay. How is working at Dolby different from being in-house at most other companies, do you think?
So intellectual property is essential to Dolby's business. It basically is our business. We are licensing our IP through two main avenues. One is through patent pools for standards essential patents, and the other is through our branded licensing program. We do some bilateral licensing, as well mixed in, and we also have our Dolby cinema business. And because IP is so critical to our revenue generation, that means that the legal department and the intellectual property attorneys are critical to helping the company make money. Unlike most in-house positions, we are not cost centers in legal. We are actually helping generate that revenue. And we are deeply embedded in the business in a way that gives us, I'd say, much more of a say in how things work and also make us more critical to the bottom line. It's the kind of place you definitely want to be if you're going to be in-house. We have an unusually large legal department from my perspective for the size of our company. And as I share this, I am reminded that I should clarify that I am not authorized to speak on behalf of Dolby. So please keep in mind, these are just my own opinions and my own comments.
Sure, of course. You did mention that you lead your team across continents and um, you've led increased employee satisfaction, I think, while you've been there. What is your leadership philosophy and how did it positively influence these results?
I am passionate about leadership and trying to do better, at all times and constantly iterating with my leadership. And so I could probably talk about this for an entire podcast, if not for all day. But one key element I want to talk about is the importance of providing context for people's work and sharing background information to help equip your employees properly. So this is important for at least three reasons. The first reason is it decreases mistakes. It decreases the likelihood of things going wrong because your workers understand the why behind their assignments. Another factor is that it increases efficiency because with additional context, your employees then can proactively provide additional information, point out mistakes, or catch issues before they become more serious. They understand what you're requesting and the why behind it. And perhaps the most important part of this is it makes work more interesting for your team. If people can see the big picture and they understand why they're doing what they're doing, they're much more deeply invested in it. It's going to matter more to them. And this, in the long run, is going to affect your employee satisfaction, and it's going to affect retention and just the level of passion people have for what they're doing. At the end of the day, it's going to contribute to a much better work product. Another factor that I think is very important for leadership is a willingness to have those tough conversations. I don't enjoy conflict, but I don't shy away from it. And I think that that has been critical to my success as a people manager. There are so many problems that can be resolved if they're faced head on and dealt with early. Whereas if you wait longer and longer, you're going to actually be affecting employee morale. You're going to have all sorts of cascading problems unfolding. And sometimes it's a death spiral. Sometimes you've just waited too long to address something and you can basically torpedo an entire department. I am not willing to do that. I will have the challenging conversations that need to be had, even if it's difficult. Also, if you're just thinking from a Machiavellian standpoint, pragmatically about what are you actually getting for the company, you need to treat your people well and you need to create that healthy environment where they can really thrive.
I love what you had to say about leadership. It's so important, especially I can imagine at a company like Dolby and the size that it is. Looking back, what experiences most prepared you for leading a global IP team?
Since I was a child, my parents always told me that I was a natural leader. And I sort of liked that idea and I agreed with that, but I didn't always have great opportunities to lead. And I think I was able to grow over time, from school to college to law school. But one critical component to this, again, I think is being willing to stand up for myself and stand up for other people. And that helps establish that confidence, that tenacity, and again, that willingness to have the difficult conversations that allow you to succeed and to operate with integrity. I think another factor is genuine curiosity about people, loving people, emotional intelligence, wanting to understand what makes someone tick, where did they come from, what motivates them. And then if someone disagrees with you, really just seeing this as, oh, this is interesting. Why does she think that way? Just that pure curiosity. And that's something I've actually gotten a lot better at just in recent years, I think. Doing some career coaching of my own, which I'm very grateful to Dolby for investing in me as a leader. But it's just really helped expand my mentality and accelerate my own growth to have that level of curiosity when someone operates very differently from how I would operate in a certain situation. And one thing I did a few years back, we had to go through our titles for my particular team, and they were kind of all over the place, from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different managers. But in order to get it aligned with the company, we had to make some adjustments. And what I did there was ensure that nobody's title went down. Nobody got an apparent demotion. Everyone either stayed where they were or they got a title kind of promotion.
Was your dedication to continuous learning, including pursuing certifications? And I know you do a lot of speaking on IP issues, influenced your career trajectory over the years?
I remember when I graduated from law school, I had gone basically straight through. I'd graduated college early, a semester early, largely to save money, gone straight to law school after that. So a little bit of a break, but I was working during that time. And then 3 years of law school, and then straight into the bar exam for California. The University of Chicago Law School had a quarter system, at least at the time, which meant by the time I took my final exams, had one day to pack and moved to California, I'd already missed an entire week of bar preparation. So I was burned out, going into the bar exam. And I remember thinking I would never take another test for the rest of my life and deciding I was not going to do that. I did not stay true to myself. Actually, after my second year at Morrison Forster, I had the opportunity to take the patent bar exam. And again, at the time, I was burned out. I didn't really feel like studying for another professional examination, but MoFo supported it very well in terms of a bonus and time off to study and so forth. And I did. And I'm so glad I did because that opened a lot of doors for me, in terms of going in-house and expanding my practice. And later on, when I was at Seagate, I decided to take some privacy examinations to become a certified information privacy professional. And I took 2 exams, one for the United States and one for Europe, administered by the IAPP, just to expand my practice and to learn. And I'm really glad I did that as well. It's not as relevant in my day job, but at some level, all attorneys need to be privacy attorneys these days. So those were some more formal kinds of trainings and certifications that I pursued even after I'd received my JD. I also expanded into some speaking opportunities. That started actually when I was in private practice. I had the chance to be a guest lecturer at Stanford University and also at the University of California, Berkeley Haas School of Business. So those were 2 wonderful opportunities. Later on, when I went in-house in 2016, I remember seeing a conference I wanted to attend, but I didn't want to pay for it. So I contacted the organizers and they said, hey, if you want to speak on a panel, you get in for free. Done. All right, I'll do that. And that set off a wonderful, interesting kind of path of different speaking engagements and conferences and connecting to different nonprofit and for-profit organizations that were putting on all sorts of intellectual property programming. In the past 10 years or so, I've had about 100 speaking engagements and I've gotten to speak both solo presentations and on panels for organizations like the ABA, the Association of Corporate Counsel, Silicon Valley Association of General Counsel, IAM, a lot of different organizations, and just made some incredible connections and learning along the way. I also have been serving as regular faculty for the Practicing Law Institute, which is the premier nonprofit continuing legal education credit organization. And that's been very rewarding for the past 8 years now.
Wow. And I fit in everything. Know that you also are involved as a board member, and I think you started a networking program as well. Tell us a little bit about those things.
Sure. So about 3 years ago, I was invited to become a founding board member for the California IP Alliance. And that is actually the state chapter of a larger organization, the US IP Alliance. It's a nonprofit organization. And what makes it unique is it's not limited just to lawyers. It actually is trying to positively influence the IP ecosystem much more broadly. So looking at education, even K through 12 education, looking at small businesses, entrepreneurs, and really just trying to help connect all the players together and promote intellectual property in California. A few months ago, I actually was invited to join the national board as well, which has been an exciting, lot to come on that actually. So I'm now a member of both boards and looking forward to service opportunities there. The other organization that you mentioned, I think may have been the Patents and Pints organization. So I am not the founder of that, to be fair. That's actually founded by a gentleman named Michael Moore, who's now the general counsel at Glean. But it was founded over a decade ago. And it's basically this informal networking group for patent attorneys, intellectual property people, and paralegals and doctors and so forth. And it's been meeting informally every single month now for over a decade in Silicon Valley. I actually got my very first in-house counsel role through a connection that I met there. So it's valuable for connecting people. People have found jobs, people have found clients there. And it's just a really, really good vibe, a really positive kind of energy. So I'm honored that that Michael had handed off the organization for that group to me a few years ago. And I think all of these networking opportunities and the speaking opportunities, the board memberships have also created benefit for me personally, from kind of more of a selfish standpoint. I've gotten to be interviewed or profiled by a number of legal publications like Law 360, American Lawyer, IAM, Managing IP, and some others. And I've also, been honored as an IAM Strategy 300 World's Leading IP Strategist now for 7 years running, and some other kinds of awards as well. So I feel like the benefits are just myriad, so many different benefits of getting involved. You have a chance to give back, but it also helps your career and your opportunities down the road.
Sure. You've done so much. And looking back, if you do for a second on your career, what are you most proud of that you've accomplished thus far?
I think I've had a few tough periods of unemployment, and I think I am the most proud of powering through and trying not to get discouraged and doing all the interviewing and the networking and the applications when it's been very difficult. And I do feel like I've been really richly rewarded at the end of the day. I was able to, as they say, live my truth, stand up for myself. I was able to operate with integrity, and I'm proud of that.
Great. And I want to ask you in closing, if you were to go back in time now and give yourself advice as when graduating from law school, what would that advice be?
I would say don't tolerate a toxic environment. Don't put up with abuse of any kind. And don't think that you can fix something. A lot of these situations, a lot of these environments have been the way they are for a very long time. And perhaps the reason that you're not being treated well is because you don't have a lot of power. So to decide to fight that environment from the inside at the cost of your own mental health, your own well-being, it's unwise. You're probably not going to succeed. And even if you do, it's going to be at a great cost. So getting out as soon as you can, keeping your options open, maintaining a strong network, standing up for others and for yourself, and then getting out to a better place. Sometimes you think that it doesn't exist. It does.
Mm.
You don't have to choose. You can have a great career and a great place to work.
Sounds like you certainly found that. And I know you are going to do a lot more. And look forward to following your journey from here. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today, Diane.
Thank you, Shauna. Such an honor. I really appreciate your time and your thoughtful questions.
Thank you.